The world saw Elias Stirling as a force of nature. The heir to a billion-dollar empire, his picture was always in the financial section of the paper. His name whispered in boardrooms with a mix of fear and awe. But I saw the man behind the storm. I was drowning at my own art show. The gallery was packed, but every smile felt empty. Every compliment sounded like pity. My instincts screamed to run, to escape the noise, the scent of polished wealth and fake interest. I was about to slip out the back door when the energy in the room shifted. A hush fell over the crowd, and there he was, Elias Stirling. He moved through the people as if he owned the very air they breathed. His presence so commanding it stole the oxygen from my lungs. My body reacted before my mind could. My heartbeat quickened, the faint, instinctive pull between alpha and omega humming under my skin. He didn't look at anyone else. His intense gaze swept the room and landed directly on me, standing nervously next to my largest painting. A chaotic splash of color I'd titled Unspoken. He walked right up to it, right up to me. He stood there for a full minute, just looking, his head tilted. I braced for a polite, dismissive comment. Then he turned to me, and his eyes were not the eyes of a ruthless businessman. They were deep and curious. "This is incredible," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through me. It's loud and quiet at the same time. Feels like hope that's fought for, not the easy kind. I was speechless. My mouth opened but no sound came out. He saw everything I had tried to pour onto that canvas. He dismissed his aides with a subtle nod, and they melted back into the crowd. For the rest of the night, it was just him and me. We didn't talk about money or power. We talked about the stupid, simple joy of street food on a rainy day, and the way a certain song could make you feel like you were 16 again. He made me laugh. Me, a nobody artist, laughing with Elias Stirling. Our relationship became our secret paradise. He would show up at my tiny studio with takeout, still wearing his $1,000 suit, and we'd sit on the floor and eat straight from the containers. He loved the mess of it, the reality of it. The first time he brought me to his penthouse, my knees went weak. The entire wall was glass, showing off the city glittering below us like a carpet of diamonds. The floors were polished white marble, and the silence was so profound it was dizzying. "It's incredible," I managed to say, my voice echoing. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "It's just a place, Darren. It's just walls and a view. You're the one who makes it feel like a home." But sometimes, in the dead of night, I'd stare out at those unreachable lights and a cold fear would wrap around my heart. The omega in me felt fragile against his world of steel and legacy. "This isn't real, Elias," I confessed one night, my voice small. "It's a beautiful dream. I'm gonna wake up and find myself back in my old life. I feel like if I take one wrong step, the glass will break and I'll fall." He turned me to face him, his hands firm on my shoulders, the faint trace of his alpha scent grounding me. "Look at me," he said. "You are the most real thing that has ever happened to me. You are more real than any contract, any stock, any boardroom. This is our life. And one day, when I have full control, the whole world will see you standing beside me. On our terms, not theirs." His parents, Serafina Stirling and the late Mr. Stirling, were tradition, legacy, and cold calculation. They didn't know about me. I was Elias's beautiful, hidden rebellion. The day I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I waited for him to come home, the little plastic test burning a hole in my palm. When he walked in, tired from a long day, I just held it out, my hand shaking. He took it. He stared at it. And the most incredible transformation came over his face. The powerful CEO vanished, and in his place was just a man, my alpha, his eyes wide with wonder, his lips parting in a stunned, joyous smile. He looked from the test to me and back again. Then he let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled me into the tightest embrace of my life. "A baby," he whispered into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby, Darren. You've given me the one thing my entire fortune could never, ever buy." He was a whirlwind of joy after that. He started sketching nursery designs on his legal pads, talking about schools and futures. When I nervously brought up his family, he just kissed my forehead. "Let me handle my family," he said, his voice filled with that unshakable certainty. "They will love this child because this child is a part of me. This is the future, Darren. Our future." I believed him. I let myself sink into the warm, safe harbor of his love, convinced that the fortress he had built around us was unbreakable. The day he died, the fortress shattered. I was waiting for him, a new onesie I'd bought folded on the couch, when the doorbell rang. It wasn't him. It was two police officers, their faces grim. Their words were clean, simple, and they destroyed my world completely. A truck. A wet road. No survivors. The storm had finally reached us, and it had taken my everything. 5 days later, the black marble of the Stirling family mausoleum felt like ice, even through the fabric of my coat. I stood at the very back of the crowd, a ghost in a world of polished grief. My hand rested on my stomach, a secret shield against the crushing weight of loss. Across the sea of dark hats and somber faces, Serafina Stirling stood, a statue of perfect, dry-eyed composure. Her gaze swept over the mourners and, for one terrifying second, it landed on me. There was no recognition, only a cold, clean dismissal. My instincts flared, the omega inside me trembling under the weight of her alpha dominance. That same evening, the silence of the penthouse was suffocating. I was sitting on the floor of the walk-in closet, holding one of Elias's sweaters to my face, trying to find his scent, when I heard the front door open. My heart leaped for a foolish second. Elias? But the footsteps that echoed on the marble were sharp, precise, and multiple. I stumbled to my feet and walked out to find Serafina in the living room, flanked by two stone-faced security guards. She didn't look at me. Her eyes scanned the room as if taking inventory of a hotel suite. "This property and all assets within it are now under the control of the Stirling Family Trust," she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. "You have no legal claim here." I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the small, firm swell of my pregnancy. "Elias would never. Elias is gone." She cut me off, her words like a scalpel. "And his indiscretions died with him. That includes you." Her eyes finally dropped to my midsection, and her lips tightened in distaste. "And that is your grandchild," I whispered, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. She actually let out a short, dry laugh. "A bastard heir is a liability, not a legacy. We will not have our name tarnished." She nodded to one of the guards, who placed a white envelope on the console table. "There is $500 there. More than enough for you to find suitable accommodations. You have 1 hour to gather your personal effects and leave. If you are not gone, you will be removed." I stared at the envelope, my vision blurring. $500. For 2 years of my life. For the future of her own bloodline. I moved through the next hour in a daze. I stuffed a duffel bag with my old jeans, my t-shirts, the few things that hadn't been bought by the Stirling fortune. I grabbed the small ultrasound photo from the nightstand, the one where Elias had pointed at the tiny blur and whispered, "That's our future, Darren." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the bag closed. One of the guards escorted me down the private elevator, through the gleaming lobby, and right out the front doors. The cold night air hit me like a physical blow. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my duffel bag, watching the cab speed past. The Stirling Tower loomed above me, its peak lost in the clouds, a monument to everything I had loved and lost. I was alone, truly, utterly alone. 5 years later, "Papa, my feet are cold." The whisper pulled me from my thoughts. I looked down at my son, Elian. His small face pinched as we trudged through the slush-covered streets toward our apartment building. His little boots, a size too small, were soaked through. "I know, baby. I know. We're almost home," I said, My voice thick. I picked him up, settling him on my hip, ignoring the ache in my back. He buried his cold face in my neck, and his scent, soft, faintly sweet like Elias's, calmed something primal inside me. Later, huddled together under our one thick blanket on the couch, I tried to rub warmth back into his tiny feet. He looked up at me, his dark eyes, Elias's eyes, full of a confusion no child should ever feel. "Papa," he said softly, "is our adventure almost over? Can we have a house that's warm all the time now?" I felt the tears then, hot and sharp. I pulled him close, holding him as tightly as I could. "I don't know, my love," I whispered, the truth finally too heavy to hide. "Papa is trying. Papa is trying so hard." And in the silence of that cold, cramped room, the ghost of the Stirling fortune felt heavier than ever. Another Tuesday afternoon. Another attempt to make a normal life. The public mall was warm, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside our apartment. I was holding Elian's hand, his small fingers wrapped tightly around mine as we walked past the glittering toy store. "Papa, look, the big robot," Elian said, his eyes wide with wonder, pulling me toward the window. I smiled, my heart aching with a familiar mix of love and pain. "He's very cool, isn't he? Maybe for your next birthday?" I said, the promise feeling hollow even to my own ears. A birthday was months away, and I had no idea how I would afford the rent next week. Just then, Elian's small hand slipped from mine. He darted a few feet away, chasing a stray balloon that had escaped another child. "Elian, wait! Don't run off!" I called out, my voice sharp with a sudden spike of fear. He stopped and turned, his little face falling. "I'm sorry, Papa." I rushed to him and knelt down, my hands on his small shoulders. "You can't run away like that. You have to stay where I can see you, my love. This world, it's not always safe." He nodded, his big, dark eyes, Elias's eyes, filling with a seriousness that no 5-year-old should possess. "I will, Papa. I promise." As I stood up, pulling him protectively against my leg, a shadow fell over us. I looked up, and my entire world froze. Standing before us was Cashion Stirling, Elias's older brother. He looked older, harder, his face a mask of cold authority. But his eyes, fixed on Elian, were wide with pure, unadulterated shock. He didn't look at me, not once. He only had eyes for my son. "He has my brother's eyes," Cashion said, his voice low and almost breathless, as if he'd seen a ghost. I pulled Elian closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Cashion," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Finally, his gaze flickered to me. The shock in his eyes was quickly replaced by a cold, calculating hardness I remembered all too well. "Darren," he acknowledged, his tone icy. He looked back at Elian. "What is his name?" Before I could respond, Elian answered, curious and unafraid. "I'm Elian. Who are you?" A flicker, pain, passed across Cashion's face. He knelt down slowly, meeting Elian's eyes. "My name is Cashion," he said softly. "I knew your father." Elian looked up at me, puzzled. "But Papa is my Papa." Cashion's jaw tightened. He rose, his gaze locking with mine. Sharp, dangerous, unspoken meaning in every second of silence. "We need to talk, Darren," he said. "This changes everything." He turned and walked away before I could answer, leaving me standing there in the middle of the mall, clutching Elian's hand as my fragile world began to collapse. 2 days later, the official-looking envelope was slipped under my door. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words "petition for guardianship and custody" stared back at me, a declaration of war. The battle for my son was about to begin. 1 week later, I stood in a cavernous courtroom, my one cheap suit feeling thin and fragile against the conditioned air. The room was built to intimidate, all dark wood and echoing sounds. At a small, lonely table, I sat with my lawyer, Sarah, a kind but overworked woman from legal aid. Her stack of notes looked like a sad hill next to the mountain of binders and sleek tablets on the other side. Across the vast, polished floor sat Serafina and Cashion Stirling. They were a portrait of power and composure. Serafina, in a sharp navy suit, looked as if she were presiding over the proceedings. Cashion sat stiffly beside her, his gaze fixed ahead, avoiding my eyes. They were flanked by a team of 3 lawyers who looked like they'd been carved from granite and ambition. The Stirling's lead lawyer, a man named Mr. Albright with a voice that dripped with condescending pity, stood to address the judge. "Your Honor," he began, "this is, at its heart, a simple case. It is about the future of a young child, Elias Stirling. It is about giving him the security, the opportunities, and the legacy he is entitled to by birthright." He then turned his attention to me. "The respondent, Mr. Darren, is an unregistered Omega with no stable employment, no assets, and no family support. He resides in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood police reports classify as a high-crime zone. He cannot even guarantee the child a consistent meal, often sacrificing his own nutrition." I felt every word like a physical blow. He was twisting my love, my sacrifice, into a weapon. When it was my turn to take the stand, my knees felt weak. I placed my hand on the Bible and promised to tell the truth, my voice a shaky whisper. Mr. Albright approached me. "Mr. Darren, is it true that you've often gone without meals to ensure your son eats?" I looked at Sarah, who gave me an encouraging nod. "I provided for my son. He was never hungry," I said, my voice growing stronger. "But you were," he pressed, his eyes narrowing. "How can a parent who cannot provide the most basic necessity for himself, food, possibly provide a stable and secure foundation for a child?" Before I could answer, he moved on. "You work as a cleaner and a waiter, is that correct? With inconsistent, shift-based hours. Who cares for your son when you are working these late nights?" "A trusted neighbor," I said, my face burning. "She's a kind old woman. Elias loves her." "A kind old woman," he repeated, making it sound flimsy and irresponsible. Contrast that with the Stirling estate, which employs a full-time, certified nanny and has a 24-hour security detail to ensure the child's absolute safety. He then presented their vision for Elias. It was a torrent of dazzling promises. The finest private international schools, summer programs in Switzerland, a guaranteed position at the head of the Stirling Empire, trust funds that would ensure he never wanted for anything in his life. When Sarah stood up for our cross-examination, her questions were gentle. "Darren, tell the court about your relationship with your son." I looked directly at the judge, pouring my heart out. "Elias is my entire world. We read together every night. He helps me cook, even if it's just pasta. We have a game where we find shapes in the cracks on our ceiling. He knows he is loved. He knows he is safe with me. I have given him every piece of my soul since the day he was born." Felt powerful when I said it. Felt true. But then Mr. Albright stood for his final rebuttal. He held up a single document. "Love does not put food on the table, Your Honor. Love does not pay for a world-class education. Love does not secure a legacy. The petitioners are not offering just love. They are offering a future. A guaranteed, prosperous, and powerful future. We ask the court to make the decision that is, unequivocally, in the best interests of the child." The judge, an older man with a tired face, listened to all of it without a flicker of emotion. When he finally spoke, his words were calm, precise, and utterly devastating. "The court finds that the petitioners, the Stirling family, have presented a clear, secure, and unparalleled life plan for the minor child, Elias Stirling. While the court does not doubt the respondent's love for his son, the evidence of his financial instability and precarious living situation is overwhelming. Therefore, the court rules that the best interests of the child will be served by granting full and immediate custody to the petitioners." The gavel fell. The sound was like a gunshot. I didn't move. Couldn't. I had just lost my son. In a battle fought with paper and silver, my love had been deemed insufficient. I had lost my son. The world had lost all its color. I walked out of the courthouse, the high-gloss floors blurring beneath my feet. The judge's words echoed in my mind. A cold, relentless loop. Full and immediate custody. I had lost everything twice. First Elias, and now the living, breathing piece of him I had fought so hard to keep. Sarah placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes full of a pity that felt like acid on a wound. "I'm so sorry, Darren. There's nothing more we can do." I just nodded, unable to speak. Words were a foreign concept. All that existed was a vast, howling emptiness where my heart used to be. The court had granted me one final, unsupervised meeting with Elian. They gave me 1 hour in a sterile, neutral room at a family services center. I walked in, and there he was, sitting on a too-large chair, swinging his little legs. He looked so small, so confused. "Papa," he called out, his face lighting up for a brief second before clouding over with confusion. "The lady said we have to talk here. Why can't we go home?" I crossed the room and knelt before him, my arms wrapping tightly around my son, burying my face in his neck, breathing in his scent one last time. I held him so tight I feared I might break him. "Elian?" I whispered, my voice ravaged by a grief so profound it had no sound. "You are going to a beautiful, safe place now. A big, warm house. This is the next stage of our adventure." He pulled back, his little hands framing my face. His dark eyes, Elias's eyes, searched mine, filled with a fear that shattered what was left of my soul. "I don't want a new adventure. I want our adventure. With you. In our bed with the cracky ceiling." A sob ripped from my throat, raw and ugly. Couldn't hold them back anymore. "I know, my love. I know. But Papa has to go on a different path for a while. You need to be brave. So brave." "I don't want to be brave," he whispered, his own small voice cracking as tears began to stream down his cheeks. "I want you." I held him again, rocking him gently, memorizing the feel of his small body in my arms, the weight of his head on my shoulder. I didn't know how to let go. My hands refused to unclench from his jacket. The door opened. Cashion Stirling stood there, his expression unreadable. Behind him, a long, black limousine waited at the curb. "It's time," Cashion said, his voice low. I looked at him, my vision swimming with tears. "Please," I begged, the word leaving me as less than a whisper. "Please, let him remember me." Cashion didn't answer. He just looked at Elian. "Come, Elian." My son clung to me, his small fingers gripping my shirt. "Papa, don't go." I had to be the strong one. I had to make this easier for him. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I gently pried his fingers loose. I kissed his wet cheeks, his forehead, his hair. "I love you, Elian. More than all the stars in the sky. Never, ever forget that." I stood up and released his hand. Cashion stepped forward and took Elian's small hand in his. My son looked back at me, his face a mask of utter betrayal and confusion as he was led away. I watched as he was guided into the back seat of the limousine. The door closed with a soft, final thud that echoed in the silent street. The car pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the city traffic. I stood there for a long time, until the cold seeped through my clothes and into my bones. Then, I sank down onto a cold, isolated bench on the sidewalk. The silence of my life returned, absolute and crushing. There was no more laughter, no more small footsteps, no more whispered questions in the dark. All I was left with was the devastating truth. In the battle between love and wealth, love had been utterly, mercilessly defeated, and I was alone in the silence.